Testing. Hello, everybody. If everyone could please take their seats. If the Senate candidates could please come to the front. All right, everyone, hello. Welcome.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Lansing Area Candidate Forum featuring Senate District 28 and Housing District 74. This forum is brought to you by the Lansing NAACP, Mid-Michigan Tenant Resource Center, the Home Rule Project, and SEIU Michigan.
So I'm Jasmine, the Michigan Director of the Home Rule Project.
And I'm Marcos, an MSU student and intern with the Mid-Michigan Tenant Resource Center.
Great. So we will be the moderators today. Each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer questions. The candidates will take turns answering the questions first. The timekeeper, if I could have Jack the timekeeper, there you are, great. The timekeeper will give 30-second warnings and then hold up a paper for stop. To the audience members, please take this opportunity to get food. We will also have takeaway containers at the end, so I don't have to deal with the leftovers. Great. So now about our sponsors. The Lansing NAACP, their mission is to achieve equity, political rights, and social inclusion by advancing policies and practices that expand human and civil rights, eliminate discrimination, and accelerate the well-being, education, and economic security of Black people and all persons of color.
And the Tenant Resource Center of Mid-Michigan is a community-driven organization dedicated to keeping Lansing residents housed and helping those without housing find a place to call home. We provide tenants with the tools, knowledge, and support they need to navigate rental disputes, fight evictions, and assert their rights.
The Home Rule Project is a campaign uniting Michiganders to oppose abusive preemption laws that take power away from us in our cities and give power to the state government and corporate interests instead.
SEIU Michigan represents 66,000 janitors, security officers, airport workers, higher education faculty, home service or food service workers, hospital workers, home healthcare workers, nursing home workers, state employees, and public servants in every single community across our state. SEIU Michigan is committed to improving the lives of its members and all people by winning real economic justice and standing at the forefront of the fight for immigrant, racial, and environmental justice.
So let's now get started with introductions from each candidate. Dr. Harrison, I'll have you start.
Okay, all right, thank you. Thank you for holding this forum. I'm Dr. Rashida Harrison. I am a working mother. I am an educator. I'm a union member. I am a member of District 28, and I have been since 2003 when I came out for grad school at Michigan State University. I'm a first-time candidate and not part of the larger political machine, and I'm running because I believe that we can govern in a different way that actually puts people above profits. And I didn't ask permission to run, and so I'm here because I believe in we the people. I believe in democracy, and I believe that any one of us should be able to run and sit at the table and have a say in what happens in our everyday lives.
Hi everyone, I'm Mark Polsdorfer. I'm a county commissioner representing the Okemos area. And for the past 17 years, I've worked at MDOT in governmental affairs. And that's given me an opportunity to work with folks on both sides of the aisle. And working at the Capitol, having those relationships is really critical in order to have a base to start with, in order to advocate for this district. Prior to my time at MDOT, I served as Deputy Director of Legislative Affairs for Governor Granholm, and have been Chief of Staff in the House and Senate, and had various roles there as well. After campaigns, MSU conducts a new candidate forum, and a newly elected forum to help bring the newly elected folks.
Thank you, Mark. Good evening, everybody. My name is Bob Pena. I am a sitting Ingham County Commissioner and have been for the last 6 years or so. I'm a resident of the East Side. Before I go any further, just thanks everybody for coming. I think an informed electorate is a better electorate and a better participant in the process. I went to school at Michigan State and got a civil engineering degree, a master's from there. So, and I did that also while working, at MDOT. I worked 35 years for MDOT, worked in the roads, worked in road design, bridge design. I followed a drilling truck for a part of that time. I had a design squad, so I've been through the process from like soil investigation to actually the design of a plan. Worked with airport projects. I worked in the Metro Airport, and I will stop now.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Ted Kilvington. I'm running for State and Senate because I have a lifetime of skills and experience to use to serve the people of Michigan. That my skills and experience include a bachelor's degree in public policy, 4 years in the U.S. Air Force, 5 years with the Michigan Supreme Court, and over 2 decades with the Michigan State Police. During that time, I traveled to all 83 Michigan counties, and I worked with government officials at the state, local, township, county, city level, even the FBI I had to work with. So definitely I'm well experienced in how government works and doesn't work to serve the people. And going to use that experience in the Senate to make government more efficient for all the taxpayers. I'm also going to fight for the principles I learned in the Air Force, which is health care for everyone and equal rights for everyone. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So, this first question comes directly from a home care worker and member of SEIU Healthcare Michigan, which represents 50,000 healthcare workers across the state. Across Michigan, seniors and people with disabilities depend on home care to live safely at home with the dignity they deserve. Cuts to Medicaid, worker shortages, and poverty wages are affecting access to that care. What is your position on raising wages for home care workers and fully funding the historic home care legislation passed in 2024?
Thank you for the question. Expanding Medicare is something that we really need to focus on at the state level. With the repeal of ACA subsidies in the last year, we'll have to see with how the votes happen if we get the majority back in Congress, whether those things can be put back in place. But if not, we need to, as Sarah Anthony says, an appropriation bill is a moral document, and we need to put those priorities into funding, whether it comes out of the general fund or not. And I see the stuff floating through it. Am I out of time?
Oh, you have 9 more seconds.
Okay.
I'll let you do one more sentence if you want.
I'll follow
Okay.
up on it.
Okay, great. And then if anyone needs a question, yes, if you want to hand it to Mr. Pena. And if anyone needs a question repeated, please let me know.
Same question?
Yes, so the key of the question is, what is your position on raising wages for home care workers and fully funding the historic home care legislation passed in 2024?
So when people, when I had my first house, when I bought my first house, the bank and the Fannie Mae and Fannie Mac and all of that business recommended 25%, right? So of your take home is what you should use for your living allowance. So I think we need to back up from that. So I would do whatever I could to raise that wage so that people could afford to live in the housing. And that would apply not just to mortgages, but also to rent. So I think once you have a little bit of extra money in your pocket, then you are going to be spending on other things, and such as probably more likely to keep restaurants and businesses around the area in motion. So we just need to raise the wages.
My 85-year-old mother who had a stroke and is severely disabled, and literally just as I was leaving to come here, an occupational health care worker was coming to the house to do a session with my mom. So this affects my family directly, and I want my mom and people like my mom to have the best care and accessible care. And that means making sure that we pay the people correctly, we train the people correctly, and that we retain the people correctly. So I'm all in favor of giving people the wages they deserve. I also was in the Air Force, so I know how hard it is to be a healthcare worker in America, and I think they all deserve the respect that we should give them.
Okay, thank you. Okay. Oh, no, my bad. Please.
With regards to where I stand, I absolutely stand on raising the wage, but not just that. If we look at the bill, what was it, HB 4706, the problem was there was a raise in a wage, but then there was another sort of loophole that was going to take away the per hour that is given to agencies. So I am for not just raising the wage on healthcare home healthcare workers, but also making sure that we don't then, add more of a bill to the agencies that are funding them, that we still continue to support them and not cut those budgets.
Great, thank you all so much. So the next person to be first, I think, is going to be Bob. So this question comes directly from a janitor and SEIU Local 1 member, Local 1 representing thousands of janitors, security guards, airport workers, and property services workers in Michigan. So to make development projects happen, our cities give businesses tax breaks and tax incentives. Those businesses turn around and hire people for those jobs, but many pay poverty-level wages instead of a living wage. In essence, in some instances, we're paying to give ourselves jobs that are not enough to survive on. Laws like the Death Star bill prevent cities like Lansing, East Lansing, and more from raising wages at private businesses in the city, even if those businesses receive massive tax incentives from the state and local government. What is your position on the Death Star bill and on state preemption of local labor laws that could allow cities to set wage requirements?
Well, I'm going to confess that when Skyview was built and I was working for MDOT, I had a hard hat and I had a vest, and I had heard there was a lot of non-union people working there, and so fact-checking is a big part of what we should do. So I walked in like I was working there, and I started to talk to some of the workers, and sure enough, they were from North Dakota, South Dakota, Tennessee, places that don't have unions. And they were just trying to support their families. But I do think any company that comes into the area to do big development projects, we should make an effort, stronger effort, to make sure they're local, first of all, and to hire local, and to hire union. And, we need to keep our money, where our people are, where our heart is. So that's where I stand on that. Jasmine, who's next? Thank you.
My father was a maintenance man for Sparrow for 38 years, and I definitely believe in strengthening the union backbone of our hospital workers. Regarding the development incentives. I definitely think we need greater oversight to make sure that they are used effectively, and I would establish better metrics for making sure that any company who benefits from those incentives has to meet certain standards. Otherwise, that they will have to pay the state back for some of those incentives. So if they're not hiring enough Michigan workers, if they're not paying enough wages, then they should be reimbursing the state for those incentives that they were given, state and local governments. I understand local governments need to, when they have higher cost of living, and that therefore they may want to raise wages. I also understand how difficult it is for small businesses to adapt to that environment, so I'll work with that.
Ask you to repeat the
Yeah.
question. Or like, just
Yeah. So the thesis of that paragraph was, what is your position on the Death Star bill and on the state preemption of local labor laws that could allow, if lifted, could allow cities to set wage requirements?
So I am in favor of lifting the preemption laws. The state laws don't account for what's happening on the ground differently in Lansing than Owasso, right? And so I believe that folks at the local level understand their communities and the needs in the best way. So I am absolutely for getting rid of these preemption laws that really just hold us in a bind from being able to raise wages, particularly thinking about like the minimum wage, right?
Thank you. One of the first things I'd like to do is repeal the Snyder-era Death Star bill. It's the kind of low-hanging fruit that as Democrats we're hearing good things that we're going to hopefully get back to the trifecta. And one of the things I want to focus on, right out of the gate and actually spend November and December working out a strategy with my colleagues is figuring out exactly what we can do to address things like labor, environment, and other things immediately in January when we're sworn into office, so we can, suck the air out of what Republicans are going to be able to come forward with and talk about. If we're addressing economic development, labor, environment, and other things, and have a coordinated plan and message, we should be able to hold strong and go into the
This question was submitted by a member of the public. Do you support or oppose a ban on the further construction of data centers? Why or why not?
This is one of my signature issues. We need a moratorium immediately on all data center construction in Michigan. The one they're trying to build in Mason, just a few miles south of here, is about a mile from where my kids live, and they'll be impacted by it directly. There are certain standards that must be put into law before we can allow any such further construction. That includes the data center development must pay for all of its own infrastructure, all of the electrical upgrades, all of the water system upgrades, all of the sewer system upgrades, and they must pay for their own water treatment. The big suggestion right now is that they've all developed what they call closed loop water systems, so that they basically have to have their own water treatment systems facilities on site. The average data center uses over 1 million gallons of water a day, and the city water users should not be in any way be on the hook for their water treatment.
Data centers. Similar to Ted, I am for a complete moratorium, but not just around the legislative. So I agree with everything Ted just talked about in terms of making sure that citizens don't foot the bill. And I don't mean just like capital-wise, but I mean health-wise, labor-wise, right? But also I want to know what the environmental impact is. So when we talk about moratorium, I'm hesitant to put a time on it because research takes some time. And I want to know what are the long-term effects on our bodies. And the other reality is that there are different types of data centers. So we're talking about those mega data centers that are fueling specifically, thinking about AI and those folks. So I am absolutely for making sure that citizens' voices are heard. And if they say they do not want a data center in their space, then we, all legislators, should be listening.
Thank you. What we've seen in Michigan is a reaction to laws that were passed in 2023. And so in the 3 years since, we're now seeing some of the unintended issues that have come up. And last week, House Democrats introduced legislation to curtail and bring back the non-disclosure agreements and other things and make improvements to what these investors are looking at putting in Michigan. I fully appreciate that folks at the local level can pass a moratorium, but we also need to think about our friends at IBEW and the plumbers and pipe fitters and carpenters and millwrights and so forth that are counting on this in order to feed their families.
Yes, data centers. So there's one thing that's not been brought up yet about the data centers is that they create a thermal. And so one of my assignments is the Capital Regional Airport Authority, and the people in Mason have a concern with the thermal. So there's a heat wall that comes up, and in Michigan there's a lot of moisture. Sometimes it can cause a cloud obscurity to the airport as planes land, as well as just heat air rising. So as the plane is coming down, it may have a bump, which could lead to an airplane accident. So that's one item. The other item is that everybody says, when you ask them in the city that, oh yes, I have, my water's not well water. Well, everybody drinks well water. That big tower you've got comes from the well water. That's a huge well to fill it. And that's a Saginaw aquifer, and the heat that's generated by that water creates chemical calcification in that water, in that groundwater, which no one here has mentioned, or that's been mentioned as of yet. But that can affect the quality of our drinking water. So there's an environmental impact here that's very critical, and we need to understand these things before we move on. Stop.
So this next question was also submitted by a member of the public. So will you be accepting corporate PAC dollars for your race?
No. Period. No. And I believe that we need to get money out of politics, including making sure that those big corporations are not able to buy our legislators. And we're talking about legislators across the aisles.
No.
No.
No, I will not be taking any corporate PAC dollars. I was certified as a pro-voter candidate by the group Voters Not Politicians, the same group behind the current redistricting commission we have that grew the current district boundaries. And one of the pledges I made to them was not take any corporate or specifically utility PAC dollars, but I'm not going to take any. I definitely, one of their proposals is to have candidates will have a fund that they can use to fund their campaigns in lieu of the corporate dollars. And while that sounds good in principle, we definitely need strict guidelines under that to make sure that they're not used inappropriately. You know, people need to pay campaign expenses, not personal expenses, for example. So, but back to the original question, no corporate dollars for me.
The balance of power between Michigan renters and landlords is different than it is in other parts of the Midwest. Do you think the current power dynamic is properly balanced? What changes would you support, if any?
Thank you for that question. funds rehabbing and redeveloping and building new rental units, residential purchase, and it's you know, the whole idea of affordability. We've also made it a point on the county board to fund assistance to folks like Aspire and Haven House and others that are very much active in improving livelihoods for folks. And personally, I've helped folks that have been on the cusp of homelessness, and you know, it brought up another issue that's not really mentioned. I'll hit it up.
Maybe
Next
no.
question.
About Jasmine?
Yeah.
Just double checking. Okay. So I've been lucky enough to sit on the land bank, and you guys don't understand what that is. It's like when people don't pay their taxes and it goes to auction. That's one of the functions that the land bank does. Our land bank here is awesome. You know, we don't want to evict people. A lot of times people get concerned when they're running low on their taxes and if there's a fear of losing their house. If you know anybody, let us know in Ingham County, because there are measures that we can do to make you stay in your house longer. When a house goes vacant, we at the county lose revenue. The economy struggles because we take a hit of a family that's not producing funds to eat at restaurants and buy commodities and just keep the community moving. Housing is an issue, and one of the beautiful things about Ingham County is we have a millage. The voters are awesome that we can help people stay in their housing and et cetera.
Well, I definitely think we need stronger protections for tenants. About 12 years ago, my daughter was living in a building in Mason, and the building owner sold it out from under her and the other tenants, and they were all given 30 days notice, even though they had leases that extended far past those 30 days. So that is wrong. One of our great local civil servants, Curtis Hertel, was Register of Deeds at the time, and he worked with our family in making sure that my daughter was adequately defended against what the landlord was doing. Made sure that they had options, like they extended the deadline to 60 days, and the landowner had to pay them money. So thank you for Curtis Hertel for that. But tenants have rights, and government needs to enforce those rights.
So there definitely is a power imbalance, right? Tenants do not have enough rights, which is why I'm supportive of Devendorf's, I have it right here. I have notes, sorry y'all, I'm an educator, so I have to have my notes so I know what I'm doing here. HB 4947, and that's about like rent control and repealing the rent control ban. So the fact that we have a ban on rent control is a problem, and that already speaks to the power imbalance. I also support tenants, the 17 bill, tenants' rights bill. We need to make sure that tenants also are able to get legal representation, right? That landlords can't just, shut off the water like what happened in DeWitt for 80 days and have to just push people out of housing. So tenants deserve rights, and we need to work harder to increase them.
Great. Yeah, it's Bob's turn. Okay, perfect. So, Michigan has no statewide right to shelter. Municipalities are increasingly responding to visible homelessness with criminalization rather than services. What is your position on anti-camping ordinances? Do you support state-level policies that would move communities towards housing-first approaches? If so, what policy tools would you support?
I do believe that we need to house people, stat. I do think there's a lot of issues that put people on the streets. A big part of that is mental health. So there's a myriad of different situations. Counseling also, I've often advocated for financial housing literacy. There are certain programs throughout the city. Cristo Rey, the north side has a, thank you. We need to realize, I do believe, housing is not a privilege. It's a right, it's a human right. And we need to house people, whether they're old, whether they're kids. Surprisingly enough, we do have kids in the school district that are homeless. You know, I don't think a lot of people understand that. There's people that are sleeping in vans, kids, people that are couch surfing on their auntie's sofa, and I'm stopping.
Well, we definitely need to expand the options available to accommodate the housing needs. And housing is a need for everyone, and it's a right for everyone. And when I say we need to, I don't just mean the state of Michigan. I also mean local governments. I mean the federal government. We need to make sure that there are public housing, not just necessarily apartment buildings, but we need to expand those into maybe tiny houses and things like that. There isn't going to be a one-size-fits-all solution. And one of the things I learned during my 2 decades with the state police is that a lot of homelessness, not only is it treated, by incarceration, but it causes other issues as well. And a lot of the issues, that crime issues and medical issues and things like that, could be resolved if we paid for housing, and we'd be spending less tax dollars overall, not more, if we did better public housing.
So the question, what is your position on anti-camping ordinances? Do you support state-level policies that would move communities towards housing-first approaches? If so, what policy tools would you support?
Yes, okay. So, I am against camps, banning camps. I think that's what I mean to say. As in, I do not think that I've seen, what we've seen around Lansing, we've seen it in East Lansing, the criminalizing of unhoused folks. I do not support that. What we're doing is criminalizing our fellow community members. I would absolutely support statewide initiatives to make sure our housing is accessible to all, including thinking about social housing and making sure that we really promote mixed income types of housing so that we can, especially since we like to think about the ways in which taxes are funding different kinds of community endeavors. So it's really important that we also know that on the ground there are lots of grassroots organizations already doing the work to give to legislators. So I think that legislators also should be working with them on that.
Thank you. This is actually something I worked on with Senator Anthony, who got some language and boilerplate in 2023 into the MDOT budget, and it specifically dealt with rest areas, park and rides, and things like that. And as Regulatory Affairs Officer for MDOT, we've been working to come up with administrative changes, and it's a lengthy process. But what we're doing is actually setting up parameters where at these locations there's universal expectations of behavior from contract workers and MDOT employees. And the reason we're doing that is it's not always been the case. There's been more compassionate reactions from folks depending on the area, and some were appalling. But I'm just going to finish this thought. One of the key things we're doing here is at all these locations placing resources through 211 resources on signs. So we're providing that information.
And when the time cuts off, everyone can be free to finish the sentence that they're on. So, great. We're running slightly ahead of schedule, so that's why.
You're welcome.
I did say no for one.
Unhoused individuals are disproportionately people of color, veterans, and people exiting incarceration or the foster care system. Would you support targeted state investments to address those specific pathways into homelessness? If so, what investments would you prioritize?
Part of it would be, housing assistance, maybe Section 8 or something similar. We'd also need social workers to intervene and evaluate the specific needs and the causes so that those can be addressed. It may be some medical issues or medical debt that is causing people to become unhoused, and we need to do something to alleviate that burden. I know from my own personal experience, a lot of my fellow veterans they were so used to civilian or military life that they were not really capable of adjusting to civilian life, and so we need better opportunities for those folks to integrate into society. We need to make sure that all citizens, regardless of color, regardless of medical background, medical issues, or military status, receive the government services they need so that their housing issues are addressed.
I think it was, and do we support statewide? Is that it? I'm sorry.
Would you support targeted state investments to address specific pathways into homelessness?
Gotcha.
If so, what investments would you prioritize?
Gotcha. So I would support that. It's hard to thinking about knowing I have people in my life that fit into all these categories, like prioritize, right? What I understand is that systems are interconnected. And so if we're investing in individual communities and organizations that are working on the ground with different constituents like foster care folks or people that are coming out of incarceration, and making sure that we invest in those recidivism types of programs. I also think that fundamentally, and I do believe that housing is a right and not a privilege, then there needs to be some kind of system in place, vouchers or whatever, that allows us, and I don't want to say whatever because vouchers can get, but at the local level, that people know where they can go to be able to get shelter.
Could you read the question one more time?
Would you support targeted state investments to address those specific pathways into homelessness? If so, what investments would you prioritize?
Yes, absolutely. I've often thought as we deal with things in Ingham County, it would just be great if the state of Michigan would follow suit at what we do. From our local millage for housing, we recently closed an RFP to $1.5 million to address 24 homes, and we should definitely look at expanding things like that statewide. The other thought that I ran out of time on was I was directly helping a family that their child had cancer, and so they were in a rental house, and obviously your first priority is to fund whatever medical things need to happen in order to address your son's cancer. And they saw their credit rating slip because they were falling behind on medical bills. And I would really like to look at making a state change that doesn't pin medical debt to someone's credit rating, which negatively affects their ability to rent or own.
Okay. Just last week, the Ingham County was very strongly involved with expungement. And so the Racial Equity Task Force, the Defender's Office from the county, the Treasurer's Office was there, you know, to erase something that was happening very long ago. But when you get a rental application, very commonly you'll find, have you ever been convicted of a felony? And it's like, if you're out, you've already done your time. You've done your service. You've corrected that, and you put your life back on the right track. So that needs to be, expungement is a big portion of like moving forward, not just for housing, but for jobs. If you know, we need to understand in this state that once somebody has made amends for their errors in the past, we move forward. You know, some states don't, not all states are like that. I'm proud to live in a state that does respect, you know, redemption, I guess, for a better word.
Who's next? Ted?
Is it Ted? Yeah.
Okay, here you go, sir.
Is it your team?
I think I did go first.
Oh, okay, that's okay. I knew it was going to happen to me at some point. I knew it was going to happen. Okay, great, okay. Okay. You went first this time?
I'm going first this time.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. The Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund, which helped homeowners facing foreclosure, is exhausted. Federal foreclosure prevention money is gone. Does the state have a responsibility to fill that gap? If so, how would you go about it?
Yes, the state does have a responsibility to fill that gap. I do need to do a little bit more research on how that looks, to be honest. And one of the ways I can think about it has to do with, I'm gonna leave that there. I need to do a little bit more research, but I absolutely believe that the state has an obligation.
Thank you. One of the things that's been shocking and appalling in the last year and a half is watching needed programs being cut at the federal level and the resulting negative effects that roll downhill to local communities. At Ingham County, we saw at the last budget cycle we had to cut about $10 million. And what that means functionally is when we value these programs, we need to make up for these cuts at the federal level and fund it locally and at the state level. So that would be a priority of mine to look at general fund dollars so we could fund that and make that a regular program and a regular allotment of funding.
Okay, so the cuts that my colleague here was just mentioning have been just excruciating. Washington has nipped, but I want to give kudos to our Ingham County Treasurer who just looked at what we've done in the budget. I've never had to do a budget over again, but last year I think we did it 3 times, something like that. Yeah, so adjustments, reallocations. So we looked at our income that was coming in from the tax base for rentals and property owners, and then we readjusted. The state did something similar to the One Big Beautiful Bill, cut school lunches across the U.S. for kids in school, but Michigan had the foresight to fund that. So there are ways with which to come up with more money. What Washington is doing to us right now, holding us hostage, is excruciating. But we can overcome.
Could you repeat the question, please?
The Michigan Homeowner Assistance Fund, which helped homeowners facing foreclosure, is exhausted. Federal foreclosure prevention money is gone. Does the state have a responsibility to fill that gap? If yes, how would you go about it?
I would say hell yes. This is my son is losing his house, and he's going to have to move in with his mother-in-law. So please keep him in your prayers. So along with his wife and his grandson, or my grandson, his son. But yeah, it's the interest rates are really killing people in terms of home ownership. The skyrocketing real estate market is killing people when it comes to investment, and the state needs to make sure that the people who are working hard, paying their taxes, paying their mortgages, can keep it in their homes, and that if they have to reallocate funds from other priorities for foreclosure avoidance, then they need to do that. It's important for everyone in this room, everyone in Michigan, to make sure that they can keep their homes.
How will you employ the voices of varied lived experiences in your administration?
I've had a broad range of experiences, and 2.5 years ago I had a stroke and ended up being coming out of the hospital with a wheeled walker, and I had to work myself back to utilizing a cane, and then ultimately to where I am now, where I can ride a bike and run a 5K. It was a journey, to say the least, and seeing the challenges and what I was blessed to have state health insurance in order to help me recuperate is something that, I'm going back to the family that was dealing with the child with cancer. We have got to be focused on health care at the county level. Ingham Health Plan exists, and this was in place before the Affordable Care Act. I'll follow up later.
Could you repeat the question? We're focusing.
How will you employ the voices of varied lived experiences in your administration?
I had a little flashback from when I was in school. So I got to the point where I really ran out of money for like a place to live. And so in Austin at the law library, which was open 24/7, I took my engineering book and I pretended I was a lawyer. And I pretended I was like reading it, and that's how I slept. And I did that probably for a couple of months till I made it to Christmas time. I do believe I am a resourceful person. I can make things happen out of almost nothing. Yeah, I do. When life gives you lemons, well, you make lemonade. Yeah, so I'm going to pass, and I think that's probably enough.
Well, when I was on my church council, I was chairing the council, and we needed a new secretary. And there was only one qualified applicant. There were several unqualified applicants, but only one qualified one, and they happened to be a trans woman. My rural country church did not want to hire a trans woman, but I made it clear to them that they could not turn down the only qualified candidate for the sole reason that they were trans. I made sure that my church was inclusive to people, and I will continue to do that in the legislature. I will make sure that both my personal staff, I will make sure that state government has opportunities for diversity to make sure that all voices can have a seat at the table, and whether that's civil service positions or appointed positions or anything else.
My scholarly identity is a Black feminist. And in Black feminism, we believe that your experience is actually data, right? That is data for us to now be able to build policies. And so my whole understanding of thinking about governance and legislation is to come with a frame of understanding that when we make policy that helps the people least empowered, then it actually raises everyone up. Difference is not a problem. Lots of people have get scared when they see like multiple constituencies. I love it because then it forces us, right, to be able to create something new, right? It forces us to think about our values and what we actually stand on and what we believe in terms of human capacity. So I will approach it as an access issue. For those who have the least access, I will work from there.
Thank you, Jasmine.
Great. Okay, so that is it for the questions that we have time for today. Sure, everyone's relieved.
No, I want more.
Yeah. Well, just because you asked.
Okay.
So now everyone is going to have a minute to give some closing remarks. So, go first.
Okay, so I kind of alluded to the fact that I was pretending to be a lawyer. I am not. I'm a civil engineer. I worked 35 years following stuff out, machinery out in the grade. Awesome time of my life. I remember just some of the best people, hardworking people that put up with all kinds of weather. You guys live in Michigan, you know what I'm talking about. I think I will be a great candidate for you because I will show up. I will be there. You can look at my attendance record, and I'm voting. I'm very proud of the fact that I've never had to abstain from anything because of a conflict of interest. I've had always my constituency as forefront in my decision making, and I'm going to be shameless. I also sit on the fair board, so I want to invite you to the August fair. If you find me, I'll buy you an elephant ear.
I'm going to hold you to that, Bob.
With or without cinnamon?
Extra cinnamon. Thank you everyone for coming tonight, and thank you for taking the time to sit through us. I know I personally think I would be a great senator for you because in my government career I've traveled to all 83 Michigan counties, and I have talked to people throughout the state. I saw problems that were occurring, and I saw ways to fix it, and I developed a policy to fix it, and we cut the number of incomplete criminal records from 500,000 down to 250,000 in just a couple of years. We did have a couple sheriffs, judges, and police chiefs who didn't want to follow the new guidelines for cleaning up the records, but I had to stand my ground and tell them, look, this is not only is it the law that you follow these guidelines, but these are your communities that are being affected by these records, people who can't get jobs or housing because of these records. Your own officers can't trust the records if they're incomplete. So if I can stand up to them and get change for the people of Michigan, I can stand up for you in other areas. So please vote for me on it before August 4th.
As a first-time candidate, it's been an interesting experience thus far. And I am asking for the ability to earn your vote. As a first-gen, lots of things, including college grad, PhD, I have the resilience, the creativity, and the energy to step up in this moment, because this is an even more abnormal moment than we were like 10 years ago. And so what I think we need in our legislation is someone that have had both lived experience, some theoretical knowledge, and has the ear and are listening to the people. I'm only here because people in my community encourage me to run, and I'm only beholden to the people. I'm interested in giving power back to the people.
Thank you. I would be honored to earn your vote on August 4th. I've had experiences working throughout the state of Michigan in the legislature, and one thing I can tell you is, as a legislator, about 50% of your energy is dealing with things at the Capitol and legislation. The other is being active in your community and solving problems when they are brought up to you. And having worked in the legislature for folks from the UP to suburban Detroit to Ann Arbor and of course this area, those issues are varied. And I've developed relationships and connections which allow me to solve those problems quickly and, more importantly, get investment back into our region. Thank you.
Well, great. Thank you so much. And on behalf of the Mid-Michigan Tenants Resource Center, Lansing NAACP, SEIU Michigan, Home Rule Project, I just want to thank everyone for your passion, engagement, collegial attitudes, respect, and everything, and for taking the time when you could be on doors or dialing for dollars to come to this nonpartisan candidate forum. For all the members of the audience, we're going to take a 5-6 minute break, and then at 7 o'clock, we will be back for the House candidates. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Well, like I said, I worked for the state police for 20 years, state Supreme Court for 5, I've also had a BA in public policy. While I was at the state police, besides working for records, I also did legislation practice for the state police, specifically the Criminal Justice Information Center and the Child Education because they were really complying. And so I kept track of every bill and every amendment that affected those two divisions for 17 years. So I understand how legislation can get wonky and also how bad legislation really does really needs to be fixed. So that's one of the things I of course, just as a political junkie in general, that experience on policy, I just, trying to be a less resident and moving on. As a candidate, unfortunately, lots of questionnaires and various first groups. And she told me, sure, to do my research before I respond to it. Because I wanted to know then the currency to get as well as the response. So I definitely research response to constituents or legislators. I saw a lot of the laws when you see them seem to have a lot of relevance in government agencies that affect them. So I would say that work out to the actual that was one of the issues with criminal records is people making policy and talking to people. So when I totally revised the state policy of criminal records, I talked to the booking officer, I talked to the court clerks, I talked to the prosecutor's office, and they're charging them just to make sure that everything is completely well, I'm certainly doing door knocking, and right now I plan on doing a mailing of July, hopefully by the end of it. And then also sharing it across all the I used to do it. I'm not going to tell you what we have budget, but I definitely got a lot of experience, just doing talking about stuff on video. So I'm pushing my campaign there, so I can just more depth on certain issues. Because a lot of times you're on door to door,
just a moment. The prior candidates, I think there's some papers on the stage, and then if the House candidates would like to come to the front and take their seats. Sorry about that.
Welcome to our Lansing area candidate forum featuring House District 74. This forum is brought to you by the Lansing NAACP, Mid-Michigan Tenants Resource Center, the Housing Rule Project, and SEIU Michigan.
Okay, great. So I'm Jasmine, the Michigan Director of the Home Rule Project.
I'm Samaya, an incoming senior at Michigan State University and also an intern with the Michigan Tenants Resource Center.
Okay, great. So each candidate will have 60 seconds to answer the questions, and the timekeeper will display 30-second warnings, just like the previous forum. The candidates will take turns answering questions first. Everyone, before we start, please take this opportunity to get food, silence your phones, etc. And we're also going to have, like I said before, takeaway containers at the end of the event. So all the groups already introduced themselves prior, so we'll skip that one over and get right into the introductions. So Aaron, would you like to go first? And here's the mic.
Well, good evening, everyone. I want to first thank all the organizations for hosting this forum. Like I tell my government students, to be engaged citizens is to be defenders of our democracy. So I appreciate all of you for coming out as well. My name's Aaron Iturralde. I'm one of the Democratic candidates running to be your next state representative here in the 74th District. I'm a public school teacher, a union member, the son of working class immigrants, and I am also a young person running in this race because I truly believe that we should be doing more so that we're not just getting by day, so we can start actually getting ahead. And part of my campaign is focusing on working class issues like taking steps towards a universal healthcare system, expanding access to affordable and accessible childcare so working parents don't have to worry about where their kids are, dynamic housing reform so that you can stay in your house but you can also find housing yourself that's affordable, and also uplifting our small businesses and entrepreneurs so we all have choices in where we shop. And in this race, what I'm trying to do is bring a fresh face to our politics, a fresh face for new ideas and a new generation of governing. Thank you.
Good evening. I'd also like to say thank you to all the organizations that helped put this together. Oddly enough, I actually was part of the early onset idea of putting this together as past president of the NAACP. I sit before you a husband, a father, a grandfather, I'm even a godfather. A veteran, retired auto worker. I am somebody that has been here working in the community. This is not new to me. I've been a part of and I've been leading several organizations that have made sure that families in our district receive food on a monthly basis. I've done mentoring of our young kids to help them find a way to their to college and other adulthood paths. I've also made sure that we have scholarships for our young people as they grow and continue to find their pathways forward. But in addition to that, I'm the past president of the NAACP here in Lansing, and I have done advocacy work for everybody, not just for
Hi everyone, my name is Taiwan 30, and I want to thank all of you for coming out here tonight. I decided to run because 2.5 years ago, I took in my 3 young nieces. I got to experience firsthand how expensive it is to raise 3 kids in today's society. The rising cost of rent, the rising cost of utility, healthcare, groceries, and so much more is putting a strain on everyday working families like mine and yours. I decided to run because we need someone in Lansing who's fighting with the urgency to address these needs, to ensure that we have a fighting chance to do more than just to survive, but thrive. It means we need to take on DT and consumers to ensure that they can't constantly raise our rates. We need to do things like freeze rent to make housing more affordable. And we need to make healthcare more accessible. I spent 4 years serving as a township trustee. I've spent 2 years working in the state legislature and 3.5 years fighting to protect reproductive rights because I know how important it is that we protect bodily autonomy for all. Thank you so much for coming out today. I look forward to getting to answer some amazing questions and tell you why I think I'm the best choice for this race.
Thank you so much for the introductions. Starting off with our first question. This question comes directly from a home care worker and a member of SEIU Healthcare Michigan, which represents 50,000 healthcare workers across the state. Across Michigan, seniors and people with disabilities depend on home care to live safely at home with the dignity they deserve. Cuts to Medicaid, worker shortages, and poverty wages are affecting access to that care. What is your position on raising wages for home care workers and fully funding the historic home care legislation passed in 2024?
Thank you. So for the better part of the last 12 months, we had my mother here with us. And we took care of my mom. And so I know firsthand how difficult it is to care for someone. I absolutely support raising wages. It is not easy. That is not a task for the faint of heart. It requires professionalism. When I started taking care of my mom, I tried doing it by myself. And I was just overwhelmed. Absolutely overwhelmed. I was fortunate enough to find a healthcare provider who came in and met with my mom, and they fell in love immediately when they got together. That young lady came to our house and took care of my mom every day. When I had to go somewhere, I could leave my mom with her and felt so safe and so secure with where she was. And so I absolutely believe that we need to make sure that we pay people what they deserve for the work that they do. Thank you.
I think this is a fantastic question. So I think that there are lots of things we have to do as it comes to home health workers. We must fully fund their union contract they just got. I was super excited when they formed the SEIU to become unionized. But we have to do more to ensure that the people who are taking care of our loved ones, the people who are taking care of our seniors, are getting the pay and benefits that they deserve. We need to ensure that when we pay them the higher wages, it will end the job instability, which will mean that our family members, our loved ones who we love and care for deeply, don't lose access to good quality care. We have to fight to ensure that they are allowed to do, so we have to fight to ensure that things like pass-through requirements go through, to ensure that the Medicaid reimbursements happen so that, again, our healthcare workers and our at-home care workers can get the respect, the pay, and benefits they deserve because they are taking care of the loved ones that we can't currently take care of. So it could not be more important that right now we stand with every member in the SEIU healthcare who are our home healthcare workers to ensure that they get the rights they deserve.
To the people who provide a dignity either for our elderly or for people who are disabled, they deserve the dignity of a livable wage. And from my understanding right now, I know the SEIU is fighting, or at least bargaining right now with the state government to get an increase of $1 above the minimum wage. That is something I would support as your state legislator. Like all my candidates here, we support a livable wage for old people. That includes our home health workers. That also means taking care of them throughout the entire process, retaining them here in Michigan as well. And one of my strong support also goes to continuing community college for all so we can cover the expenses of home health care workers as they go through education, as they go through the process of becoming certified in these fields. Look, I am someone who is 25 years old, and my mother is getting older every day. And one thing I would hate to see is she not being able to take care of herself and will one day might need a home health care worker. I want to make sure that home health care worker is not only part of my family, but also can support theirs.
Great, thanks. And then to Taiwan, perfect. So this question comes directly from a janitor and SEIU Local 1 member. SEIU Local 1 represents thousands of janitors, security officers, airport workers, and property service workers in Michigan. So to make development projects happen, our cities give businesses tax breaks. Those businesses turn around and hire people for those jobs, but many pay poverty-level wages instead of a living wage for the operation of those buildings. In essence, in many instances, we're paying to give ourselves jobs that are not enough to survive on. Laws like the Death Star bill prevent cities like Lansing, East Lansing, and more from raising wages at private businesses in their cities, even if those businesses receive massive tax incentives from the state and local government. What is your position on the Death Star bill and on the state preemption of local labor laws that could allow cities to set wage requirements?
We must do everything we can to get that bill off our books. I think that as a former local township trustee, no one is more aware of how local preemption laws hamper us and prevent us from doing what we know is best for our constituents. We are the ones who are closest to our residents day in and day out. When it comes to corporate accountability, we must ensure that they do not get to pay our workers starvation wages. We should pass a tax that says if your workers qualify for state benefits, we will tax you to pay for those benefits because they deserve a quality of life that allows them to do more than just survive, that allows them to not have to work 2 and 3 jobs just to make ends meet. We need to ensure that if corporations are going to build here in the state of Michigan, then we do everything we can to ensure they hire locally, that they're union-paying jobs, and that their wages they pay do not force families to work 2 and 3 jobs just to pay rent and groceries.
I fervently believe that local politics is the most impactful on our day-to-day lives. And I would support repealing these preemption laws in the Death Star bill that we have seen devastate our communities for the past decade. And we see the impact of it. It means that people in our communities are living in starvation wages, low wages, can't afford basic necessities, and that has just been hampered even more with the costs of living crisis we see now. So not only should we repeal this, and something that I would support as a state legislator to repeal it, but let's ensure that we hold these corporations accountable as well. If you are going to be getting tax incentives from the state, from the local government, you need to ensure that you are also giving back to our communities, not just in paying good paying wages and keeping up with labor standards, but what are you also going to do to support our infrastructure, our community, our health, our safety as well? See, I think it's enough. I think it should be enough. It shouldn't be enough just to get a tax break and then pay good living jobs. You should also be benefiting our communities at the end of the day.
I'm an absolute yes to repeal the Death Star. I have lived outside of the country in places where I've lived in China, and I've seen exactly how corporations get away with doing the absolute minimal for a community. And I'm afraid that I'm seeing it happen here. And so absolutely here, these corporate entities, they have to pay proper wages. They have to make sure that unions are protected. Collective bargaining is an absolute must to help our own employees thrive and survive. I have worked in both non-union positions and in union positions. I've seen the difference. I've worked for great companies. I worked for Ford Motor Company, and they are very high on corporate citizenship. Lear Corporation, GM, they all give back to the communities. Why wouldn't we expect all the other organizations, all the other corporations to do exactly the same? It's so easy. It's always got to be people over profit. Thank you.
This question was submitted by a member of the public. Do you support or oppose a ban on the further construction of data centers? Why or why not?
So this...
You're all good there. You're all good.
That was my bad.
we saw this debate happen in Lansing just a couple months ago when Deep Green was proposing to build a data center in our downtown core. I support a minimum 1-year moratorium on data center constructions across our state because we don't know everything and all the impacts that these data centers will do, whether it's to our environment, to our neighborhoods, to our air, to our land, to our water, to our farms. We need the time to actually study the impacts, not only on health but environment of these data centers, but also properly regulate them. That also includes ensuring that there are proper transparency protocols and accountability for these data center companies so that they are not taking advantage of our communities. Look, as a public school teacher, I am seeing the impacts of AI in our schools, and it is scary. And if we don't address this now, just like we didn't address social media and regulations then, just think about the impact that it could have, not only on our kids, but our future in our communities.
Thank you. So data centers have been a major issue here recently. And for me, I see it as the corporations have tried to rush us with a false opportunity. They were in a hurry. They brought it here without any studies being done, in the hopes that we were going to say, oh, they're bringing us money, let's do it. But that's not the case. It didn't happen. And I'm thankful that Lansing stood up and said, no, absolutely not. So yes, I support a moratorium. And in that time, the organizations need to come up with and understand their own structure, their own system. So with the plumbers and pipe fitters, I went to their training session a few weeks ago. And in that, they show a working model of a progressive opportunity to recycle and retain the water. It's a closed loop system. But it's only in the early stages. And that goes for everything else that they tried to rush on us with the data center. There's so much more. There's legislation that needs to be put in place to, guardrails to help protect from them having and running up our energy bills and passing that on to the rate takers. Thank you.
I would support a 2-year moratorium in our data centers because we need much longer time to study this. But beyond this, we must roll back the tax credits they got back in 2024 because we do not need data centers getting breaks to build and destroy our environment, to use our water, and to tax our grid. Beyond that, we have to fight to ensure that local communities have the right to refuse these data centers. The state should not be able to force communities to open these data centers. We must fight to ensure that we do everything that we can to protect our long-term investment in our communities. These data centers don't come with the promise of permanent jobs. They don't come with any real regulation ensuring that they don't overtax our water. We must ensure that they can't pass the increase in our rate on to ratepayers. It's why I am a proud supporter of the Michigander for Money Out of Policy ballot initiative to get corporate utilities from no longer being able to donate their politics in the state of Michigan because we need to ensure that our politicians are accountable to us. And the last thing I'll say is this. When we talk about transparency, we need to ensure that politicians can no longer sign NDAs with these business agreements when they vote on legislation.
Sorry about that. This is another question submitted by a member of the public. Will you be accepting corporate PAC dollars as campaign donations for your race?
No.
No, I'm going to take my full 36 seconds here to talk about this a little bit more. I spend about 20 to 26 hours working to circulate the petition for the Michiganders for Money Out of Policy ballot initiative. And it's because I know how important it is that we ensure that when you go to vote on election day, that you know that the person you are electing is accountable to you and only you. Not to the folks who donate to the campaign, not to the big corporations who tell them that, hey, you can't vote on not raising our rates. The reason why we haven't seen moratoriums pass on rate hikes is because our politicians on both sides of the aisle are accountable to the corporations. If I got elected, I would pass a 5-year moratorium on DTing consumers raising our rates. Because 2 months ago, consumers applied for a record high rate increase on ratepayers like you and I. And 2 weeks ago, consumers applied for a record high rate increase on ratepayers like you and I. I know if I go to my boss 2 months and say, hey, can I have a raise? I come back 2 months later and say, can I have another raise? They're gonna look at me like I'm crazy. And it's about time we start looking at DT consumers like they're crazy, because they are.
My answer is also no as well. Because for far too long, money in our politics has been the reason why we aren't seeing working class policies be prioritized. I remember one time as a teacher, I teach government, I showed my kids how much it costs to run a campaign. And the eyes that they had when they saw the money. And then later on when I showed them another slide where I showed you where that money was coming from, they're tired of it too. I think we're all tired of seeing corporations and special interests buy up our elections every election season. And at the end of the day, we don't get anything from it as the people. That's why I'm proud to have taken the no corporate PAC money pledge. I've also been proud to also do the no utility money pledge. Because at the end of the day, your representatives should be accountable to you. Not corporations, not where the dollars are coming from, but from the people. And as of someone who's fresh in politics, that has been my motto day one, is representing the people, not special interests.
All right. Thank you all so much for answering. All right. South Lansing has some of the highest eviction filing rates in Ingham County. Would you carry or support legislation to reduce displacement for low-income renters in this district? What would that legislation require?
I think that, yes, we have to ensure that, one, if folks face an eviction, they get access to a lawyer to help them fight for their rights in courts. When I worked for an organization called Detroit Action, this is one of the policies that we worked in coalition with a lot of organizations to pass in Detroit. And I was proud to be a part of that team who got the ball rolling that with many other organizations. We must also fight to ensure that we pass laws that allow incentives for apartment complexes and rental units who will provide second chance, third chance, fourth chance housing to folks who simply fall down on their luck. We must pass a Tenants Bill of Rights that ensure that we don't allow things like your credit score and past evictions to be the sole reasons why you get denied housing. Because we know that stable housing is the key to job security. It's the key to health. It's the key to mental health. It's your ability to feel safe, to be protected from the environment, and to know where your next meal is coming from, to know that you are safe in your home. And so I will be a strong advocate to ensure that we protect the rights of renters.
I'm a renter myself, and just recently I actually had to move apartments because the cost of my rent was more than I can afford on my teacher salary. But when it comes to ensuring that our tenants are protected from false evictions or unfair evictions, that is something I will fight every day as a state legislator to do. That means passing the Tenant Bill of Rights to ensure that our tenants have rights such as the right to a lawyer, right to counsel, as well as right to payment if their landlord decided to evict them so that they have another place to go afterwards. But it also means that we need to hold these corporate landlords, especially these out-of-state corporate landlords, accountable for buying up these housings, inflating and artificially inflating the cost of housing in our area so that people can actually afford to stay in their homes. That is what I'm fighting for every day as your state legislator, is to ensure that people like me, people who rent day in and day out and spend more of their paycheck on rent, can have secure housing at the end of the day.
I've been a renter and a homeowner since I moved here. And I know renting is very difficult. And we do need to pass laws. And I need to go to fight every day to make sure that people are protected from being evicted. So that people are educated. So that we know, our community knows how to fight for themselves. We need laws in place to make sure that everybody has a right to counsel. That they have access to funds. I know that as the NAACP, we supported a program where we made sure that we help people pay for attorney fees so that they wouldn't be evicted right away, that they gave themselves 30 more days to get themselves in order. Those are the things that I will fight for if I'm in office. Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. Encampments exist in this district. Do you support or oppose criminalizing homelessness? Would you support state-level tools to ensure housing first responses? If yes, which tools?
First things first, anytime we're addressing the issue of homelessness, we always must lead with empathy first. These are human beings who happen to be down on their luck or choices that they made got them to where they're at. At the end of the day, we need to be supporting our homeless neighbors. And that means investing in our local municipalities, ensuring that townships like Delhi, cities like Lansing have the funding they need to actually support homelessness in our area. That also means investing in redeveloping red tag homes, because it should be housing first. We know that housing is the first step to ensuring stability in one's life, but also at the same time ensuring that we're funding other services, mental health services, recovery services, so that those who are down on their luck, who are experiencing homelessness, which is oftentimes just a horrible thing to experience, have the resource they need to not only get by, but start getting ahead as well.
Thank you. Homelessness should never be a crime. Never, ever. Not in anyone's mind, not in any paper, not in any law. Never. I have sat with the mayor and the city manager of East Lansing when I was the president of the NAACP, along with Khadijah Erickson, as we fought, as they were making laws to criminalize homelessness. So tomorrow is not it for me. Today is it for me. I am in that fight, and I will continue to do that fight once elected. Nobody should feel ashamed for falling on hard times. Those are people. Those are human beings. I personally had a situation in my family where somebody was homeless. It rocked me to my core. I did everything I could to help them find dignity in their situation and recover. I will do everything I can to make sure that there's never a law passed that criminalizes homelessness, and it will support unhoused people. Thank you.
When it comes to homelessness, we have to pass sweeping legislation that will ban encampment sweeps. If we can't ban encampment sweeps, we need to make sure that we make it a logistical nightmare for cities and townships to carry these out. We need to pass laws that say that you cannot displace someone who's been displaced in the past month, because that will require cities and townships to collect the names of everyone in encampments. It will require them to, again, ensure that they can then get that information on to community resource and organizations. We need to also fight to ensure that if you displace someone, you are required to provide them a secondary location and provide the transportation to that secondary location. We must also fight to ensure that this cannot be done by police officers. This should be done by social workers who are there to ensure that these folks can gather their belongings safely. We need to be required to give them a 2 weeks heads up so they can gather their things and not lose their belongings, because we have already stripped them away of their dignity by not taking care of them. There is not one homeless person who exists in the state of Michigan who is not an example of a failed policy in this state to not take care of them.
To Mr. Pope. Right. When homeowners fall behind on property taxes, they can lose their homes through a forfeiture process that often strips them of any equity they have built. Are reforms to Michigan's property tax forfeiture needed? If so, what reforms would you support?
Yes. I would support reforms that make sure that there are funds available to replenish the coffers and provide money to those individuals that fall in hardships. Being stripped of your equity, being stripped of your personal resources is a terrible thing. And there should be no policies in place that allow that to happen to anybody. And so I'll fight every day to make sure that there are policies in place that support the people and provide opportunities and pathways to a better future. There are programs out there that can help us teach and learn how to become homeowners and better caregivers of our own finances so that we can build our own finances and resources up to sustain a dignified living. Thank you.
I think that we must ensure that if you fall behind on your taxes, that you get every cent of equity that you put into your home back. Because that's your money. If you bought the house, you've been paying your mortgage, you deserve to get the money you put into that house back. I think it's absolutely insane that we are doing this to folks today. I would also fight to pass a law the same way we protect renters if they are facing eviction, that we will pass a law that ensures that if you face foreclosure on your home, that you're allowed a lawyer to fight for your rights in courts. Because if you fall down and you can't pay your property tax, or you fall behind and your home gets foreclosed on, it is the biggest indication that you likely can't afford a lawyer to protect your rights. We need to do everything that we can to protect and not punish people when they fall down. Because again, I want to make it clear, someone falling down is an example of a failed state policy. It's an example of failed investment of good, high-paying jobs. It's an example of failed investment in lowering the cost of groceries, utilities, and healthcare to ensure that these folks actually make ends meet. So yes, we must protect folks when they're at their most vulnerable.
I hope to own a home one day as a young person. And with this current housing market right now, it seems that dream is becoming farther and farther away from me. And knowing now that we're seeing also people who have bought their homes, have been paying their mortgages, now losing it because they can't afford their taxes, that's not right. So what do we do as state leaders, as elected officials? Well, policies like investing in financial literacy courses for our young people in particular who may not know the first thing of what to do when they buy a home. But also ensuring that we're also addressing the cost of housing itself by both tackling the supply and cost of it. There's not enough housing in our area for people, which, if you study economics, naturally increases the price of homes. But at the same time, we're also seeing corporations buy up housing in our area and artificially inflating the cost, which causes people to have to pay more in both their mortgages and in interest rates. So let's ensure that we're holding both corporations accountable, but providing and investing in services so that people don't have to live through such an awful experience like foreclosure and losing their home and their equity.
Emergency shelter is not adequate housing. What is your position on the state's role in funding transitional and permanent supportive housing? Do you believe your approach would manage homelessness or end it?
So I think that the goal must always be to end homelessness. We have thousands of vacant houses just in Lansing alone. We must work to get those buildings up to code so we can put people in houses. I think beyond that, there is a housing readiness package in the State House right now. It's HB 5529 through 5532, and then HB 5582 through 5585. The very goal of this legislation is to lower the undue burdensome regulations to drive down the cost of building housing, to then ensure that we can not just build affordable housing, but build more housing to answer the supply and demand issue that we are having right now. We must take the vacant homes we have right now and hold the landlords accountable who have let those fall below code, get them back up to code so we can provide people with the stability that they need. There is more than enough housing to address the homelessness crisis happening in our state. It's a matter of priorities. It's a matter of recognizing that our state budget is a reflection of our values, and we must invest in our budget to make sure they reflect our values.
Could you repeat the question just one more time?
Yes. Emergency shelter is, yes, okay, sorry. Emergency shelter is not adequate housing. What is your position on the state's role in funding transitional and permanent supportive housing? Do you believe your approach would manage homelessness or end it?
I agree with Taiwan that the end goal here is to end homelessness, is to ensure that people are in homes, in secure homes, affordable homes at the end of the day. So that's why, I support programs, especially with the housing choice vouchers. Last week I was at this housing forum hosted by the Rent's Too Damn High Coalition, and one of the things I had learned about that is how even though we give direct cash assistance for rent, oftentimes that's not enough to even pay the down payment for a home. So let's ensure that we're investing as well in the other costs it takes to own or even rent a home. We also need to ensure that our localities have the resources and the ability to redevelop red tack homes across Lansing and across Delhi Township. There's so many of them. You can drive up and down any street and you can see homes that are ready to be refurbished and redeveloped so that people can start living in them. And this goes back to ensuring that our localities like Lansing, like Delhi Township, have the resources in their minimal budget to actually start addressing not only the transition out of homelessness, but into permanent homes as well.
Thank you. Absolutely, it's time to end homelessness. I was at a resource fair last week put on by Ingham County, and the Ingham County Planning Commission has a plan in place to build 1,000 more units before the fourth quarter 2008. And they also have a plan to refurbish 100 units in that time as well. And at that resource fair, I found it just amazing, the amount of information and the availability of resources for everyone to take advantage of with regards to having money and also having access to banks to help achieve down payments. It's within reach. We need to teach. People need to step up and come out and find a place to get the resources. And in that fair, they were providing services that would help people get past their current struggles, get to a better place. And I think that we need to continue funding programs like that and need to support the Ingham County Planning Commission. Thank you.
Great, thank you. And then I believe Aaron is next. So, Aaron, how will you employ the voices of varied lived experiences in your administration if elected?
You know, I already come from a background of diverse identities. I'm the son of immigrants, I'm Mexican, Filipino, I'm part of the LGBTQ community, but I know that's not enough, right? That's not all the knowledge out there, that's not all the lived experiences out there. So one of the things I have done in this campaign is meet people where they're at, whether that's at a festival, whether it's at their door, whether it's at a bar, meeting people where they are at, where they're congregating. Not asking them to come to me, but me going to them. And that is something I will continue to do as a state legislator. Look, the Capitol is in our backyard. It shouldn't be hard for our next representative in the 74th District to still be out there in the community, in between votes, in between meetings. That is something I'm willing to do. And here's the thing, as a teacher, I understand the importance of lived experiences because every day I have to understand the lived experiences of my students to better educate them, to better console them, to keep them in a warm and comfortable classroom. And that's what I'm going to bring as a state legislator into the Lansing Capitol.
Lived experiences, huh? So, being the oldest one up here, I've got a little bit of that. I have traveled the world. I have served in the military for 10 years. I've worked in the auto industry for over 30 years. One of the things I've learned is to work with people and understand where they are, what they're going through, and for me, how I can help them. And so I think I've done a tremendous job. There are many people out here in the audience, in the community that I've worked with through their struggles. And so I want to take that to the legislation and use that skill set, use that, all that I've learned, and make a difference. I've learned a lot. I've seen a lot. I've been a single parent. I have struggled. I have been afraid that I was going to get kicked out of my place because I'm working nights. I have a teenage son going through high school, and I have no support system. And so with that lived experience, I want to help other people get through what they're going through. Thank you.
So whether it's my time as a township trustee, the time I spent working at Reproductive Freedom for All, or the time I spent working in the state legislature, the thing that I know to be true is there is nothing that gets done without the help of people like you in this room. That nothing worth fighting for is ever achieved alone. It's why I am a deep believer in this idea of co-governance, that policy should generate from the people who are most impacted by you. So here's what I would say. If you elect me to be your next state representative, I expect to see all of you in the office, in the state capitol with me, helping build the policy. I'm not going to invite you to a seat at the table, but you are going to build the table with me. We will set the agenda together because that is what is needed in the state legislature. It's not someone like me telling you, here's what I think is best. It's you telling me, here's what I need, and then I go into the rooms of power and deliver on your needs. So I will open up the doors of the Capitol, of my office, and ensure that every single day we are listening to the ideas and policies that people need because we need to do everything we can to meet their needs, and we do that by listening to them.
balance of power between Michigan renters and landlords is different than it is in other parts of the Midwest. Do you think the current power dynamic is properly balanced? What changes would you support, if any?
Well, I do think they're out of balance. I think that we need a strong voter rights bill, renters' rights bill that helps support our renters with stability. Make sure that they have protections from being evicted inappropriately. Make sure that their power doesn't get shut off. Make sure they have access to quality water and other systems. But I think that there's so much that needs to be done in our policies. We need to make improvements to make sure that they are protected every day. And I'll go to work every day to make sure that I work with other legislatures to identify the best approach to move us forward in that zone. Thank you.
So right now we're seeing private equity firms come into neighborhoods and buy houses, artificially driving up the price of housing. So until we stop that and put a ban on that, we are always going to be in a world where we have more renters than owners. We must shift that policy. We can do this by investing in things like our first-time buyer program, like loan assistance to ensure that folks can start to own houses. But so long as we have this imbalance, we must invest in rental policy now. We must invest and ensure that renters have the right to organize, that they can push back against their landlords to ensure that they don't have fear of being evicted for simply advocating for themselves. We must pass policy that prioritizes the needs of the folks who are most being impacted by the lack of investment in affordable housing. And I say we can do that by, one, just building more houses. We can do it by bringing up our current houses to code to ensure that we can get folks in those homes. But as said, we must take on the corporations that are artificially driving up the price of housing to ensure that someone like me, I have no plans of ever buying a house. I know I will never be able to afford it because that's the way they want it to be.
What I understand, especially in the power imbalance between renters and owners, is that there's not a lot of landlords. All our apartments are being consolidated under private equity and corporations. And what happens at the end of the day is you don't have choices in where to live. That's why I propose and will support a bill that regulates and sets a limit of how many apartment buildings and homes corporations and private equity firms can actually buy. Especially for the most affordable homes, or what is supposed to be the most affordable home, are mobile homes. Currently in Delhi and in Lansing, there are a lot of mobile home parks that are being bought up by not only out-of-state corporations, but foreign corporations. And what ends up happening is they drive up the lot prices, even though the people own their homes. So that person is now forced to leave, oftentimes leaving their home and having to find somewhere else to live. So one of the biggest things that we need to do first is tackle corporations who buy up these housing, and that deals with getting money out of politics first and foremost, and then regulating how many homes they can actually buy up in our communities.
Great, and then I think it's to Tyler. So Michigan has no statewide right to shelter. Municipalities are increasingly responding to visible homelessness with criminalization rather than services. What is your position on anti-camping ordinances, and do you support state-level policies that would move communities towards housing-first approaches? If so, what policy tools would you support?
The fact that local municipalities and legislatures are spending any time investing money into making it harder for folks to find a comfortable place to sleep it baffles my mind. These folks have already been stripped of their dignity, and we have decided that instead of investing in policies to improve their lives, instead of investing in policies that would get them into homes, we're going to invest in policies and budgets that will make it hard for them to sleep on the bench. I'm sorry, listen, sleep on the local park bench, sleep in local parks, because until we do our due diligence and ensure that homelessness doesn't exist in the state, we have no right to criminalize it. I want to be clear that as a state legislator, I will fight tooth and nail to ensure that we return dignity back to folks. We get them jobs, we get them access to housing and healthcare, and make it easier for them to reestablish themselves, because that is our duty. As said, there is not a homeless person who exists in this state or in this country who is not a shining example of something that a state has done to fail them, whether it's not raising their wages, whether it's not investing in our education, investing in our healthcare, our mental health care. We must take care of our homeless folks.
Michigan has no statewide right to shelter. Municipalities are increasingly responding to visible homelessness with criminalization rather than services. What is your position on anti-camping ordinances? Do you support state-level policies that would move communities towards housing-first approaches? If so, what policy tools would you support?
Look, when it comes to anti-camping ordinances, I am vehemently opposed to those, right? Again, we should be leading with empathy when it comes to addressing homelessness. You know, one thing, like I mentioned earlier, I went to this housing forum last week with Rensselaer Dam High, and one of the things I had learned is that oftentimes our local municipalities are strained in their resources when it comes to addressing homelessness, because oftentimes other cities are choosing to send their homelessness populations to our cities, which which puts some strain on our ability to finance it. And we already know that cities are already dealing with constrained budgets. So here's what we need to do. We need, as state legislators, to put appropriate funding to our local municipalities to actually address these issues, to actually address homelessness, to get people into housing first, but also support those services, the local services around our community, to support those who are experiencing homelessness.
As I mentioned earlier, a few months ago, I was in the mayor's office in East Lansing, having this very same argument with the mayor and the city manager. They were criminalizing the unhoused, and that has to stop. I fully support any measure that changes the mindset of our community. It's just out of order. It's out of pocket. It makes no sense. Somebody said just sleep on the bench. I agree with that. There's nothing wrong. Nobody else is sleeping there. Nobody else is sitting there but the person who is homeless. You think people are homeless by choice? They're absolutely not homeless by choice. And so we as a community, as a society, and as legislators need to fight for policies that helps find places for these people to live, to help them get dignity, to help them get health care, to help them be taken care of, to help them make sure that their mental well-being is protected. And so, just as I've done it in the past, I will do it going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for coming and for answering the questions in this forum. Now it's time for closing remarks. You each have 60 seconds.
Again, my name is Aaron Adaralde, and I am running to be your next state representative. Look, I'm a young person in this race. I'm fresh to politics, so I understand concerns. But here's the thing, folks. I'm ready for a new type of politics. I'm ready for a type of politics that listens to the people first, that doesn't base their decision-making on corporations' dollar donations into our campaigns. I'm ready to show my students that our government can actually start working for us again. Because that's what we deserve. That's what government is supposed to do. So every day, like I do as a public school teacher, I'm going to fight to continue to protect our democracy, but also to ensure that everyone has not only a chance to get by, but also has the ability to get ahead. Thank you.
So I could use this time to tell you why I want you to vote for me, but we have Kyle from MERS here, and I think that while meeting here, it's important to talk about something important. The Port Huron Valley Women's Correctional Facility has seen 3 deaths in the past month. And we are doing nothing to investigate and to look at this as a state. State legislators have been calling every single week to investigate these deaths, to investigate the conditions that are happening in these facilities, and it's falling on deaf ears. So while the media is present here today, and while all of you are present today, I am asking to call the Michigan Department of Corrections chair, call our governor's office, call your state legislatures, and demand an investigation into what's happening in these facilities. These conditions are horrific, and they are doing nothing about it. These 3 deaths are unacceptable. And we have the power to push for change if we decide to call a state legislature, decide to call the governor's office, and decide to call the head of MDOT and say enough is enough. We need to take care of folks in these prisons. Thank you.
Well, my name is Harold Pope. I am running to be the next state representative. I too am new to politics, but I'm not new to doing community service. I am not new to leading in the community. Under my watch, I've made sure that organizations that I participate with, like I said, provide food for 500 families every month. A couple of weeks ago, we did community service. A couple of weeks before that, another organization, NAACP, we did the health fair for men. Months before that, we did a health welfare for families. So I'm a part of this community, I listen to the community, and as a result of that, I have identified programs that we have put into place to help our community get better. And so as a state representative, I will do my best to take that to a higher level and provide those services across this district and make plans to have programs similar to that throughout the state. Thank you.
All right. Well, thank you all so much for your engagement today. I think between State Senate and State House, Mid-Michigan has a lot of really talented people to choose from. So thank you all so much. And, okay, I need a special shout out to Mid-Michigan Tenants Resource Center for providing so many of the volunteers today. Special shout out to Jack for the timekeeping. What an amazing job. No, you all also have to take food home. You have to take food home, please. Okay, thank you so much.